So, standard spoiler warning here. Look away now if you do not want to be spoiled for details about the deeper storyline and locations in Subnautica. Okay, assuming you've stopped and gone away now if you needed to. So, this video combines two chunks of footage that I had. The first is coming across the 250 meters deep Degassi base. Now, I think for this one you will need a depth module on your Seamoth, but otherwise it is reasonably accessible. But you need your Seamoth down there for oxygen, for obvious reasons, because it will just make your life easier. You could establish a base down here if you were desperate to, but generally I just visit it with my Seamoth, and I also come down here to grab magnetite, which is quite a useful resource for you. So you get a hint from this chap about where they've gone to.
You stopped being in charge when the ship you were captaining sunk.
I'll stop being in charge when you take charge of yourself.
Say, Chief. Chief,
What?
you know how to drain those grow beds of 40 tons of stormwater? Or how to conjure food from the air?
I know how to prioritize.
I'm just saying, if that's so, what's your boy's life worth to you today? If tomorrow you're gonna be so hungry you start wondering what it tastes like, let him go deal with your plans.
Son, go deal with the plants.
Bard, Torgal has disembarked the habitat.
Interfere with my family again, and when rescue arrives, I will leave you here. Do you understand me?
No rescue coming, Chief. Not in time. No staying here neither. This rain keeps falling, sooner or later this place will be buried. Only choice we got is whether to get buried with it.
Passing 200 meters. Oxygen efficiency greatly decreased.
Yeah, so basically they got forced off their island, which meant they had to re-establish a base somewhere else, and this is where they picked. You can tell there was quite a lot of tension between these three, but they were the only three on the planet at that point, so didn't have much choice in the matter. So here's a dead giveaway. Crates on a platform base where really they have no right being. You can see there's a PDA there as well that you can grab. And there are various PDAs around the Degassi crew and their little adventures. Not much else here to grab, mind, but there is that.
Signal location uploaded to PDA.
Always worth grabbing the PDAs. So these are basically giving you information about where they were thinking about going. One of which is here. So you can see I've just enabled the beacon for the proposed habitat down here, basically. And I'm now off to hunt it down. Got to keep your wits slightly about you down here, because the big worms will try and grab you. But they're not too bad, really. They're avoidable, so don't worry too much about them. Not quite sure why I thought going around here by myself was a good idea, mind you. I think it's because I'm hunting for magnetite, and it's quite hard to spot down here, which is why I'm eyeballing things at close range. The Seamoth headlights do help quite a bit, but they're quite small chunks. I don't like mushrooms anyway, especially not when they contain these guys.
30 seconds.
I'm going for a scan. There we go. Crab snake. Beautiful.
Oxygen.
Welcome aboard, Captain.
So getting a little nibble out of my sea moth for my troubles as well, which is nice of him. Or her, or it. Pick a pronoun. Sorry, regular pauses to grab magnetite because you don't see it very often. And so the Shroom Cave is a very, very good source for it. And in the back of my mind here was the simple fact that I wanted to do quite a lot with scanners in this particular run through the game. I'm going to do a separate video about the scanner rooms because I think they're underrated. I don't see them mentioned a huge amount. So I will do that a little bit later on. Maybe not tonight.
Seconds.
See, there's a nice thermal vent just ahead of me here as well. So, if you wanted to try out thermal power, this is a place to try and do it. There's not a lot else down here. There are a few fish. Yeah, if you want a constant power source at this point in the game, yeah, that it would work. It would be an option, but I don't think there's any other major selling point apart from that down here. It's quite an enclosed cave as well. I don't think there are any ways in or out apart from the main sort of surface routes. So, given that right now your oxygen use is compromised at this depth as well, then it's not an ideal place to be trying to do anything too complex. You can see there's half a habitat module here, but this isn't actually the main section.
Seconds. Oxygen.
Just being a magma tourist now. So the temperature's getting up to a good, it's getting up to sort of 78, 80 degrees there, which is more than enough for a thermal plant to operate quite happily. So it's an option. It's an option. I should probably have cut some of this magnesite hunting malarkey out, but it's demonstrating what you can scavenge down here, I suppose, if nothing else. And if you didn't know you could get magnetite down here, then it's worth pointing it out. Unfortunately, as I haven't actually run out of storage space yet, I'll probably look for a little bit longer, but I will get back on mission in a moment. I've had a few more chunks taken out of me. But I'm still driving. And here, tucked in a corner, lies the shallow Degassi base. The crab snakes won't really bother you this far into the corner. You're not near their mushrooms, they're not going to be overly fussed about you out here. Just going to do a bit of a repair job on the sea moth to keep her going. I don't like losing them, that's why I name them. I like to bond with my sea moth. See, there's always stasis rifle fragments around the Degassi. I've already got one, so it'll get me titanium though, which is, you know, kind of worth it. This is me scanning the bed from outside the habitat just to be efficient. Now I get a basic double bed.
New blueprint acquired.
And now I can also make a nuclear reactor, which is of course of significantly more use to me. So once again, the Degassi habitat remains come up trumps for you basically in terms of getting blueprints. Because the nuclear reactor is a significantly good power source for you because it lasts a long time when it's appropriately fueled and you can put it anywhere. And as you'll see from some of the other videos that I've done, you know, it's very easy to put it together, so you can use it as a very sort of ready power source for wherever you need to do it. Lots and lots of nuclear reactor fragments around here, so if you were short on any of them at all, then you're laughing really. Actually, now I've got it, sorry. It's a funny thing, when you're scanning, you get a sort of an initial hint as to what you're going to get, but often you have to scan more of that type of remnant again in order to actually get the full blueprint available to you. But there's loads of fragments of it lying around here, so it's really not an issue. One of the things with this game, you know, it's not really there to make like your life hugely difficult. Generally speaking, there's more than one chance to do things, and even if you were to lose something, you'd probably be able to find another example of it, so you wouldn't really get dead-ended terribly often. It's quite a long way from home, that one. Storing it. So one downside with some of the plants, they do take up 4 container slots. So if your inventory is low, grabbing the specimen can mess you around a bit, which is why it's useful again to have the sea moth handy. Because generally speaking, I only ever equip it with cargo containers, simply because it means that I've got that much more cargo capacity right on me, basically. It's still only finite, obviously, you know, but you know, in theory, you could load maybe up to 3 cargo modules on there if you wanted to. So if you're harvesting, you know, if you need to go somewhere and just collect stuff, then it'll do the job reasonably well, up to a point. So again, really, I don't need any of these fragments. I'm scanning them in order to get the titanium out of them.
Integrating new PDA data.
So notice I'm cleaning around the outside quite thoroughly first before I actually venture inside, which, you know, it's just a methodical way of doing things, I guess. That's down to individual play style. Now this is interesting because the first time I got stung by one of those, I'm pretty sure I died. Now, I'm not sure if it's the suit I've got on or if I just got unlucky the first time. It may have been the latter. But do watch out for them. So this is a water filtration machine, and again, this is a blueprint you will only get from going in here. You can get water from other ways, of course, but this will get you 50 water in a bottle for the sake of time. So it's well worth having because other options are, you know, more inventory intensive, not always available. You know, getting 50 water in a bottle is easy. It just takes time and energy to do it. That's all. But actually, I mean, just thinking about the concept, you could in fact have more than one of those units in a base. I tend to have just one from a space point of view, I suppose, if nothing else. But actually, you could have more than one. So you could mass produce water if you chose to. Would be an option, actually. I might think about that next time round. Because once they've produced 2 lots of water and 2 lots of salt, that's kind of your lot until you empty it, which can be quite inefficient because if you're away from the base for quite a while and you haven't emptied it, then it's just sat there doing nothing basically. So being able to do it in parallel might actually make quite a lot of sense. So you do have to be quite careful in here because depending on your capacity for oxygen, you're not going to last that long in here, and you've got to be careful about getting stung by these guys.
30 seconds.
Which is why, as you'll see in a moment, I moved my Seamoth because having it a mile away from the entrance to the base wasn't that smart an idea. Because I need to keep bobbing back to refill my tanks. I'm just checking this upper deck out because I know there's something in here. By the way of
Integrating new PDA data.
So that's that top level there cleared out. And now I want to go into the other end of the base and see what's left here. So there's your ultra high capacity tank. And that will get you over 200 oxygen in a single tank, so that's well worth having. Because that gives you a lot more versatility in terms of how long you can go without having to retreat back to your Seamoth. Which, as you can see from my scarpering here, I could really do with at this point. And I think that's about it for in there. Always worth double checking because the PJs do emit a little bit of light, but if you've got your flashlight on, you can actually mask them. So you do need to be just a little bit careful that you have definitely got everything, because the last thing you want to be doing is having to go back because you've realised after the event that you needed to get something, especially not if it's a place that you only go to very seldom, or have gone there for with a particular reason in mind. So I'm just sort of checking the lockers, checking the corners, just triple checking that I've not missed something blindingly obvious.
30 seconds. Oxygen.
Just thinking about what I can eat there to try and clear an inventory slot, I think. Yep. It's really hard to spot that stuff. Right, and away we go. So now I'm heading rather deeper than I was before, twice as deep in fact. And that does pose an interesting problem for the sea moth because its crush depth, with what I've got it equipped with at the moment, is only 500 meters, and the base that I'm going to is at 500 meters. But I have discovered that if you park on the roof of the base, then you're just under 500 meters. So you can park your sea moth right on top of the base and just leave it there, and you know, with that depth, with 2 depth modules, to Mark 2 with a Mark 2 depth module, that will do you, fortunately. This is quite an interesting one to get to because it flummoxed me for a little while coming at it from this angle, because I couldn't quite figure out how to get down to the weight, you know, the sort of the beacon point that gets put into your PDA. Obviously, eventually I spotted the gap. So you'll see that what I do now, having realised that I'm in the right place, I actually stop, come back up, and actually drop my own beacon here, because what I want to know is at what point should I descend when I reach this, having come from, you know, a more natural kind of surface position. So I just hop out and use a beacon to note where it is that I should be dropping, in order to get back down to that sort of area. And again, in a future video I will demonstrate a little system I've come up with, which basically abuses the hell out of the beacon system in and of itself, but I think it does make the game a little bit easier for those of us who find getting around it a little bit challenging, because obviously there are certain beacons that are put in place for you, but more general navigation can still be a little bit of a challenge. And yes, there are categorically maps available online which are very, very useful, but when you're actually in the game itself, judging distance and everything else can be quite tricky, because there isn't an auto map function that I'm aware of. Somebody please tell me if there is. But there isn't an auto map function, so you are navigating by sense of smell and by virtue of any beacons that you put down yourself and any of the inbuilt nav beacons that the game gives you, and that's about it. So I'm going to work on a video which will maybe give you an idea for a method you can use to get around that problem and sort of improve the situation a little bit. Yeah, these crab squids.
Detected a titanium mass somewhere in this area. Unable to confirm whether it originated on the Aurora.
And of course that's a great big clue there.
Maximum depth reached. Hull damage imminent.
See, I lost 10 points off my hull strength just by dipping under 500 meters depth, so you do have to watch yourself. The sea moth is pretty fragile about its depth. You'll see there's a separate video in a different playlist on my account here, because I had to do something about these guys at one point because they were really, really annoying me. They clearly don't have eyes in the back of their heads, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do that. It's interesting that once you're out of the sea moth, they tend to leave it alone. So it's now, notice that EMP affected my instrument. I don't think I'd really clocked that before, but it does knock out your instruments as well. Your handheld stuff now, not just your subs. So you do want to bear that in mind with them around. So I finally figured out how to get into this deeper base. You can see that it's been pretty knocked about. As I understand it, I think a Reaper Leviathan had a go at it. That's my I think that's my understanding. Oh, now the swim charge fins are epic. They're actually quite a game changer, and again, it's one of those things that I don't see mentioned that much on videos, and I'm going to do a video on them as well because they change the dynamic quite a lot, and
Integrating new PDA data.
to my mind, that's always a sign of a good game where just as something is becoming deeply tedious, it brings in something that removes the tedium factor, and that's exactly what those fins do. But there is a sting in their tail to them, which I'll explore when I come to look at them. Coffee. I don't actually drink coffee, but maybe I should. Should note as well, it's not possible to repair this habitat or any of the Degassi habitats. You can't sort of bring them back into use. It's a bit of a shame, really, because you would think that with your repair tool, by its very principle, it would allow you to do that, but it doesn't, I'm afraid. They're dead as the proverbial. They are just window dressing at this point, unfortunately. Squidward's back. Sling your hook, Squidward, come on. I don't really know if those carryalls are worth anything particularly. You can store a few bits in them, but you can't carry them once you've stored stuff in them. So, slightly catch-22. Basically, I mean, they're mobile lockers, I suppose, in that sense. It's they're of use in that respect, but that's about it, really. So, this didn't dawn on me the first time I played through, I don't think. But of course there is, if you look at this base from the outside, there is very clearly an upper level to it. And that upper level is not accessible from the main part of the base that I just went into. You see, you're at 496 metres there, and so your Seamoth is fine. Just. You see, there is stuff in there, in this upper level. So it's just a question of realising that you can actually get into the upper level. You can see there are 2 PDAs there that are waiting to be collected. Of course there, you've got a hatch, which is open. Duh. But it's just one of the things where, unless you're being super observant, you will not spot it. So that's any containment blueprint collected. And that's of use. And again, you won't find that anywhere else, I don't think. And that's a shield generator for your Cyclops. Again, very, very useful. And you won't find it anywhere else. Just begs the question why they weren't building their own Cyclops if they've got the blueprints for that sort of thing. But, such life's little quirks.
Integrating new PDA data.
And that basically tells you what happened to them. If I remember rightly. It also demonstrates that you can potentially stack any containment, I think, although actually I think they're... Well, I know you can, but actually I was thinking they had them here, but they haven't. So you definitely want that.
New blueprint acquired.
And you won't find many of those either. So again, really important that you have a good solid look round, because the Degassi bases are a really important source for unique things that you will not find elsewhere in any of the other wrecks. I mean, the Aurora actually came equipped, I think, with a lot of its blueprints because it was going to hunt for the Degassi. Well, that was the part of the plan. and that's why it's got such well-stocked blueprints and had prawn suits and all the rest of it. Because I think a lot of them can operate in space and other environments as well, but they are obviously designed for subnautical adventures. Hence, you'd expect it to be so equipped. I think that's really about it, but it's well worth a visit. I mean, the squids are irritating, and you do have to be prepared to either avoid or deal with them. They are quite easy to deal with. There's a separate video showing that. But those are both of the underwater gassy habitats. And so where you go from there is a choice I leave up to you. As Keanu once said. Give or take. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and tell your friends if they are into Subnautica. I know this is a little old now, but it's all good stuff. Cheers for now.